So I think we are live now at this moment. Thank you so much for following this webinar, this Renew webinar on circular economy. As you all know, the European Commission came forward with a new action plan on circular economy. And now it is being discussed within the European Parliament and in the Council. I have the honor and the pleasure to be the rapporteur in the European Parliament on this topic. We are preparing a report with some proposals and some actions for the Commission, member states, and maybe also for other key stakeholders. What I will do in my report mainly is to highlight how important this topic is. When I just started, I could not imagine how unbelievably broad this topic is on circular economy. It's huge. And you can tell also about the 1,000 amendments that we got from colleagues on my report. Maybe to start first, why I think circular economy is so tremendously important, and also so important that we now organize a webinar on this. I really think that it ticks the boxes on people, planet, profit. Maybe to start with profit, I think that with circular economy, only with that, I think we as European Union can remain competitive also in the future. We are not a continent with a great amount of resources or low wages, but we make that up with our knowledge and innovation power. And I think really with the circular economy, we can compete on that. Second, also, I believe that with a more circular economy, we will be less dependent on third countries and the import of resources, and that is beneficial for our profit as well. Then on the planet, I believe so much that this is key for achieving the targets on the Green Deal. Or to put it the other way around, I think without circular economy, we will not reach the climate goals, for example, or the biodiversity or the environmental goals within the Green Deal. So this is tremendously important. Then the last thing, it's on people. I believe that if we can indeed scale up in the European Union, our circular economy, that will create jobs, a lot of jobs, high educated jobs, but also the more less educated jobs. I think we can get some, how you say, the manufacturing jobs back also to the European Union. Saying that, also for the consumers, I think this is of highly interest. Also my report and also the action plan of the European Commission is emphasizing a lot about consumer products, that they should last longer, that they should be reusable, that they should be fit for purpose for a so-called share society, that it's better to share it with others. So I think really this is an important aspect there for the consumer as well. And of course, I forgot the transparency that is involved there. So it ticks the boxes of people, planet, profit. It's hugely important. And what we would like to talk today is, for example, the design of the product. I think it's an important tool to prevent waste anyway, so that you design, for example, indeed the products that in such a way that they last longer, that they're more reusable, or that components can be reused. It's all kind of the aspects in the design. Second, I hear from business a lot, from startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, that they can do much more. That they can do much more on circularity, but they have two main barriers. One barrier is the competition of secondary raw materials against virgin materials, and the second is the availability of safe and good quality secondary raw materials. And also there, I think design is a key element there. Try, for example, to make products better reusable, or that with policy, for example, we demand that a certain content of recycled material or renewable material should be included in the product. We have today 5 panelists that I would give the floor. The first one is Mr. Janusz Potocznik. He's the co-chair of the UN International Resource Panel. He's also the former commissioner for environment, and before that he was commissioner for research. And he will speak very much of the role of product design for the circular economy. I will give him 30 minutes to give his presentation, and I think that this is a great opportunity already to get into the detail about the design and the design out of waste. And I'm very pleased and honored to have you here, Mr. Potocnik, and I would like to give you the floor for the coming 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the invitation. I will start sharing the screen now. I hope it works. So let me say first what I will not talk about. So because many of my colleagues will talk about that, and I know that I will not talk about any specific products, nor I will focus very much on the work which is connected to the product policy in the European Commission. But what I will try to do is do a convincing story why everything what you are doing, everything on what you are focusing makes so much sense, and it is so important. So let me start with the year 2020. It's a kind of a wake-up call for the future we want. It's actually a very strange year. So we are reaching the tipping point. So we are leaving the safe operating space across multiple Earth systems. We are in economic reset, economies in lockdown, and governments releasing the biggest stimulus packages in recent memory. Multilateralism, it's on the bench. We see US, China going in different ways. And we see also the climate activism with renewed vigor. But on the other hand, there is also something which brings us hope. It's a paradigm change in European politics, which is coming through the European Green Deal as a new strategic objective. And let me try to focus a bit on that in the next steps of my speech. So in the State of the Union address, President of the Commission van der Leyen was pretty clear. It's about making systemic modernization across our economy, society, and industry. Our current levels of consumption of raw materials, energy, water, food, and land use are not sustainable. We need to change how we treat nature, how we produce and consume, live and work, eat and heat, travel and transport. It's a new investment plan for Europe. It would be difficult to summarize it better. When we talk about European Green Deal, we should definitely not have only the communication which was released at the end of last year as a European Green Deal. So we should always understand all the documents which are coming as actually implementation documents of the vision which was set in the communication last year. But everything that should be considered as part of the whole action which one can summarize under the European Green Deal efforts. What is for me the most important thing to remember? It is a new growth strategy which is finally clearly acknowledging that environmental and economic goals are not in contradiction. Actually, it is just the opposite. Future economic development depends on how we will preserve and protect our natural capital and how we will treat our nature. It is also clearly saying that special attention should be given to social considerations of the transition. Success of the reform efforts proposed by European Green Deal to a large extent actually depends on the acceptance, particularly from the socially, of course, more vulnerable groups of people. So if you want, in short, the transition we will talk about will fly on fall on social questions. That's why it's so important to connect them with everything what we are discussing in our approach. The UNEP International Resource Panel, which I'm co-chairing, and the Club of Rome were pretty clear in defining what is at this moment and in the future the core limiting factor of human well-being and our economic development. And these are, as already mentioned before, natural resources and environmental things. So if you want to talk about future economic development, it is impossible to talk about that and how efficient and successful we will be if you do not address the natural resources and environmental sinks questions. That's why the natural resource optics is so important. The way we treat natural resources to a large extent determines economic results, as well as environmental and health impacts. Natural resources are a kind of a bridge between economy and competitiveness on one hand, and climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and health implications on the other. But let us quickly look through some of the major messages which came through the report which International Resource Panel released last year. It was Global Resource Outlook, where for the first time we put major data together and also do quite serious methodological modeling with the results which followed. So there are some messages which came clear. For the last 50 years, which were covered by this report, global resource use has more than tripled. It has almost doubled per capita, which means that majority of that tripling could be devoted to economic growth and to a lesser extent, even if still important, to the population growth. And finally, which is the most interesting, the black curve which you are seeing in the screen, that's the material productivity. Material productivity is the efficiency of the use of the resources per unit of GDP. This is the curve for global results. The material productivity was increasing till the year 2000 and then started to decrease on a global level, even if it's very likely increasing practically in all countries. How this could happen? Because majority of the products which we have produced before were produced and bought by consumers, by us, in the resource more efficient countries like Europe, like Japan, United States. And then a serious structural shift happened from resource efficient to less resource efficient countries. So a lot of the things which we are today buying, it's produced either in Indonesia, India, China, in the countries which are comparing to our countries less resource efficient. That's why the global material productivity actually started to decline, and we can actually see that we use more materials per unit of GDP than before the year 2000, which is a really interesting insight. We have also analyzed the environmental impacts in the value chain in the resource extraction and processing phase. And we find out that 90% of global biodiversity loss and 90% of water stress can be devoted to this resource extraction processing phase. Half of the global change impacts and even 1/3 of the air pollution health impacts. This does not include yet the consumption phase, which means that if I translate, for example, the last part, 1/3 of the air pollution, if you buy a new car and you park it for the whole life cycle, so you actually don't use it, you have already caused 1/3 of the air pollution because that car needs to be produced and the resources which are inbuilt in the car needs to be extracted. So majority, when it comes to biodiversity and water stress, as we can see from the slide, from the green part in both circles on the left, they are connected to the biomass, where you can get pretty straightforward conclusion that if you want to deal with land-related biodiversity loss and with the water stress, it is practically impossible if you do not address the question of the biomass, which means the questions which are related to forestry, but in the first place to the agriculture. So that is why in the International Resource Panel, we are so viciously supporting the so-called decoupling concept. We do believe that human well-being and economic activity in the future absolutely should be decoupled from the resource use, and both should be decoupled from the environmental impacts. It's purely about physics. If you are already with the impacts of the resource use hitting the wall, as we see today, for example, in climate change and biodiversity loss, then it's the pure physics. If we want, for example, to even talk about growth of well-being and future economic activity, we can not do that without seriously addressing how we will decouple that from the resource use. Circular economy, as mentioned by Jan, it's an instrument, actually, very powerful instrument for delivering that decoupling of economic growth and resource use from environmental impacts. But it should also be seen as a part of the bigger picture of economic, societal, and cultural transformation needed to deliver the SDGs. Walter Stachel, one of great first authors of the circular economy vision, nicely put it: linear economy, it's like a river, and circular economy, it's like a lake. And this brings me to the Circular Economy Action Plan, which, Jan, you are responsible for report. It is an important document, without any doubt. There are 4 components which I believe all of us know. One is linked to sustainable product policy, which will be pretty much in focus today. One to key product value chains. One to the less waste, more value. And finally, the last part, it's connected to the cross-cutting actions. I will certainly not go into details because we know it very well. But let me just try to underline 2 things which are in particularly from the product story important. When I have proposed the the first circular economy program in the Commission, that was in summer 2014, to be honest, it was very much focused on so-called waste philosophy and waste approach. So it was very much still looked through the end of pipe story. Why? Because we were simply forced. We had to review all the directives which were at that time on the table, and this was the optic where we simply, in a way, if I'm honest, abused the fact that we can look to those questions in a bit different way, that we would look to the questions of waste not as a problem, but rather as an important economic solution. But what was done in the Circular Economy Action Plan is that they nicely moved from this waste framework approach to the product framework approach. So from end of pipe to the life cycle approach. And there are a lot of questions which could be taken into account under the product framework approach, from waste hierarchy to product hierarchy, from value retention system, product value retention system development, end of product status, producer ownership concept, design of sustainability requirements, public procurement requirements, product passport, registration for market access, and so on. To be honest, I would be very much in favor if actually the direction would be that Waste Framework Directive would be in a way upgraded or additionally added with something like Product Framework Directive, because I simply believe that going through the eco-design and putting additional products there, which is without any doubt important, might be due to the fact that I know how the things are organized, there might be quite time consuming, because you need for each agreement between the member states, and if it's the only thing which we really don't have, it's abundance of time. This leads me to the question, what is actually wrong today when it comes to the resource utilization from the product point of view? Currently, we have organized our economy in a way that the producer is to a large extent responsible for the product until it's produced. When it leaves his factory, then it's actually consumer, and at the end of the use, it's society. So how society will then organize that? Obviously, it will again organize it also with the private initiatives at the back. That's another question. But what is the fact is that the link between the product and the producer, it's after the product is leaving the producer, it's entirely lost. So there is no real retention of the value, no real interest from the producer side that it would actually keep the value, that would be interested to get the product at the end of the use actually back home. So if we would focus on retaining the value, rethinking the ownership, aligning incentives also with the regulations which we have in eco-design directive, for example, if we would have the system on the market which would stimulate producers to design the products differently, because they would be still associated and they would know that from the design depends a lot what they will get back. If they would differently organize business model, practically you would not need even the eco-design directive, because the whole economic system would drive everything in that direction. Or if we look to the same question from the consumer side, it's not about towing, it's about using. So we don't need cars, we need mobility. We don't need light bulbs, we need light. We don't need chairs, we need to sit. We don't need refrigerators. We need children, healthy food. We don't need CDs. We want to listen to the music, which actually already happened in reality. We don't need pesticides. We want healthy plants. So dematerialization, rethinking the ownership again, and moving from efficiency to sufficiency here are core policies which one should have in focus. What is actually the problem? The problem is, of course, that preferences from the consumers to own the products like houses, cars, refrigerators, clothes are driving consumption in a massive lock-in, and also in underutilization of the resources which are embedded in those products. But the solutions do exist, and I see them in particular in two avenues. One is exploring the opportunity that the young generation is less ownership biased than my generation. And what is most important is to provide consumers with alternative options. Never approach to the consumer, we will take that from you, but rather we will bring you in a different way. And while the consumers, or the majority of the consumers, I would dare to say, would like to behave more responsibly and sustainably, but you need to give them a certain options that they would have the possibility of that. Just a few days ago, the Club of Rome and Systemic, I'm basically involved in both of them, have released an interesting document, which is called the System Change Compass, Implementing European Green Deal in Time of Recovery. What we claim is that the ambition of the Green Deal is really high. It set zero net emissions, GHG by 2050. It's mentioning decoupling of growth and resource use. It's acknowledging the need for fair and just transition, and it's strongly interlinked and mutually reinforcing policy recommendations which are included. But implementation, we do believe it's quite uncertain. Why? It does not sufficiently really address the drivers and pressures that cause the environmental damage. It does not offer enough systemic perspective to guide decision making. And of course, implementation is put at extra risk due to the COVID-19 recovery kind of thinking, which might be more short-term biased. So what we are proposing, it's mapping and envisaging the system in service of people and planet, deriving the system level orientations towards desired state, and also chart the pathways towards prosperity and well-being, which would be within the planetary boundaries. I don't have enough time to explain that in detail, but I will just give you the glimpse, and I would actually urge you to read the document by yourself. We have proposed 10 system change compass principles. I will touch that a bit more later. We have put them then in the context of the real world, and we have for each of those 10 principles proposed 3 system policy orientations, so 30 in total, which creates a kind of overarching policy system of clear orientations where we should go. Then we have proposed 8 economic ecosystems, and for each of those ecosystems, again, 3 to 5 ecosystem policy orientations. And finally, we have proposed also 50 plus very concrete development opportunities, which are in line with the ecosystems which we have proposed, and also with the policy principles which we have developed before. So what we are proposing very quickly. So among those 10, first, redefining prosperity, embracing social fairness for real prosperity. Redefining natural resource use, prosperity decoupled from natural resource use. Redefining progress, meeting societal needs as a purpose of a model based on economic ecosystems. Redefining matrix, performance measurement should be updated. redefining competitiveness, resource optimization through digitalization at the heart of European competitiveness, redefining incentives, show the real value of social and natural capital, redefining consumption from owing to using, redefining finance, the facilitator of the transition, redefining governance, a systematic approach to governance influenced by science, and finally redefining leadership, intergenerational agreement through new forms of leadership. None of them comes first or last. That's why they are in the circle, because we have to simultaneously work on all of them, and they would create a kind of a core base around which we could find an agreement for future developments. So if I just give you one example of these 3 system level policy orientations for each of those 10 compass principles, about the first, redefining prosperity. What we are saying is that we should balance policy attention from income and wealth creation, which is currently very much in focus, also to income and wealth distribution, and ensure that economic transition contributes to equality and social fairness by guaranteeing universal basic services and minimum levels of income. I don't know if you know, but after 2008, these are facts from European Commission documents, the income distribution or the differences in income in European Union countries actually increased. And also the access to basic services has worsened for those who have less wealth, which leads somebody to the question, why do we need growth if we are actually increasing the social differences? So I think it's simply, of course, the growth focus is important, but I think that we have to balance it very clearly also with the social fairness and equity story. Then we should create conditions for social acceptance of the necessary transition through enhancing reskilling, educational programs, introducing funding mechanisms to support transition, supporting lower and middle income groups to help them absorb the full cost introduced through all economic ecosystems. And full costs are actually the precondition. If you don't value something and we do not value natural capital, then of course you have major problem with economic signals. And finally, we are also advising to replace part of the income-based taxes with resource-based taxes to address resource as well as also social policy targets. This leads me to that from this more abstract field, we then entered into more real economic relations, which we have defined, as I mentioned before, in the context of how much they are resource intensive, because resources are those who are actually causing the problems to climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and so on. So we identified 4: nutrition, housing, mobility, and the rest of the consumer goods. So that means clothes which we are wearing, textile, that means computers which we are using, and so on. All the policies which, by the way, we will address also today. And then we have also identified 4 major economic ecosystems which would help us deliver these societal resource-intensive needs: nature-based solutions, energy, materials, which of course should be used in circular way, and information and processing. So actually innovation and digitalization, which is the most important tool in that context. So it's a very, very simple scheme. Why we are naming it economic ecosystems? Because they are like environmental ecosystems, entirely connected between each other. And why? Because a lot of economic solutions can actually be learned from how nature has addressed those questions. Finally, we proposed also 50+ nascent industrial development opportunities: healthy food, built environment, intermodal mobility, consumer goods, nature-based solutions, energy-based solutions, circular materials, information and processing, which are in line with the previously developed concepts. Also, the European partnerships, which R&I in the Commission are proposing, they are proposing 49 of them currently, are to a large extent synchronized with that. These are the future research priorities, only that they are more addressing also the health issues, which in our case are not included because they are not resource intensive, and they are less addressing the demand side part of the story, which we think it's pretty important. So if I summarize, we have a new compass, 10 compass redefinitions needed. Then we have 8 economic ecosystems. We have 50 plus development opportunities. For each of the compass orientations, we have policy orientation, so 13 total. For each of the economic ecosystems, 3 to 5 concrete economic ecosystem level policy orientations, and finally, a clear explanation of why these champions, why these economic opportunities were actually proposed. This could nicely consist and be the next renovation wave, which today European institutions are so much talking about. Why the resource management, and these are last 2 slides free, why the resource management is so important for European competitiveness. I have already mentioned at the beginning that natural resources are kind of a bridge between economy and competitiveness on one hand, and climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and health implications on the other. Let us see that bridge. First, if you look through the economic lenses, according to raw materials scoreboard of European Commission, the European Union was in 2008 between 75 and 100% reliant on import of most metals, which we inbuilt in our products. And more than half of EU energy needs are met by net imports. Prices of raw materials are extremely volatile and in the long term growing. And the resources constitute far largest share of industry input costs, much more than the labor. So it's a common sense to focus on those questions. When it comes to the questions which are related to environmental story, I have already mentioned before that resource extraction and processing is responsible for 90% of global land-related biodiversity loss and water stress, 50% of global climate change impacts, and 1/3 of the air pollution health implications. So building a clean and circular economy promises to reduce our dependence on imported materials, lower our environmental, climate, and health impacts, and create more local jobs. It can also help improve self-sufficiency and resilience, which was so exposed by the COVID-19 in relation to the global supply chains. So in short, to improve European competitiveness, the focus should be on decoupling economic growth and well-being from natural resource use through redefining our economic model and also by applying new technological developments and digitalization. I was yesterday participating in the debate about new industrial policy of the European Union. And as you know, we talk a lot about green and digital, and that this is the direction which we choose, which I think is the right direction. But to be entirely frank, until we have Black Fridays, we will have a lot of digital and we will not have a lot of sustainable. So we have to approach to that in a systemic way and really remove some of the signals which we are sending to producers and consumers on the markets. Which could be the potential resource-related targets? I think this is important only from the point of view, because I know that you are discussing also in the context of the Circular Economy Action Plan, what to do. And I have to address that issue because I was already mentioning that in the proposal in 2014. So one potential way to go is material footprint indicator, which provides a better understanding of material consumption as it counts all resources that are mobilized across borders to produce a product and are often left behind as waste in producing countries, and also attributes them to the consuming country of the final product in virtual tones. So why this could be good? Because the data for member states can be derived already from Eurostat, so they are existing domestic material consumption RMC based on the data that member states are already reporting. Alternative, it's impact footprint, consumption footprint. Main advantage is that it looks at the impact, so the consumption side, not just material use. Currently, ETH Zurich is developing a new method to read global databases to derive high confidence indicators, avoiding double counting of impacts across the value chain. JRC has also developed a method based on 16 impact categories using official data, and will be extended to biodiversity, marine litter, and so on. But it's not available for all member states. It's more difficult for member states to accept data that they do not report by themselves. Then the third possibility is resource productivity target, GDP per unit of material consumed, DMC, measuring the decoupling economic growth from resource use, which is the objective of Circular Economy Action Plan, consistent with SDG target 8.4, improve progressively through 2030 global resource efficiency in consumption and production, and endeavor to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation in accordance with the 10-year framework of programs of SCP, with developed countries taking the lead. That's the quotation from target 8.4. Energy efficiency targets in that way are already existing today, but the question exists: does it make sense to base future indicator in relation to something which would need to change? That's the GDP. Finally, my final remark would be: targets are definitely an important policy tool, but market signals are those which are actually driving very much behavior of producers and consumers on the market. So we cannot, on one hand, send signals leading to quantity-driven higher profits, capital returns, and growth, creating socially unjust society, destroying natural capital, while on the other, through the public interest and regulation, including the target setting and public funding, trying to limit the damage which is created on the markets. This simply creates a lot of confusion, a lot of lobbying, and a lot of badwill. So we must fix the compass. I think there has never been a better moment for Europe to move from the history of resource-driven imperialism into an era of responsible use of natural resources, mitigating our resource fragility, and also strengthening our preparedness and resilience, which is so important. This would also clearly position the European Green Deal and give it a real historic and also strategic weight. And that's the last slide. As Johann Wolfgang Goethe nicely said, knowing it's not enough, we must apply. Willing it's not enough, we must do. And we are currently pretty much in the phase of knowing and willing, and we have to move to applying and doing. Yesterday, on the seminar, which was about the new industrial policy, Commissioner Thierry Breton actually asked the question, do we have the courage to do what it takes? And I think this is exactly the right question. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Potocnik. That was great. A lot of things to be thinking about. And it shows again that circular economy is not only about circular and recycling. No, it's about the whole economy and refining our economic model. And I think, that is so incredibly important. And this topic is so broad that we really should think about and really should act. And saying this, maybe it's a good bridge to go to the next speaker, the representatives of the Commission, representative of DG Envy, Emmanuelle Maire. She's the head of unit of the Sustainable Production, Products and Consumption. I would like to give the floor to you, please.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Huitema, for giving us the possibility to be with you today. I hope that the screen is now displayed with the PowerPoint presentation and that everyone can see it.
No, not yet.
Not yet. I'm sorry about this. I will try again. Now it should be online.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for your patience. So today I would like to focus on the sustainable product initiative that has been announced in the context of the European Green Deal. That you see the different branches of the Green Deal, and one of the key branches is indeed the mobilization of the industry for a clean and circular economy. Under the new Circular Economy Action Plan, we have 35 actions for the forthcoming years in view of a systemic change for the European economy. And as was highlighted by you beforehand, the key focus is indeed on product policy and creating a product policy framework. So the circular economy should not be seen as a waste policy, but really as closing the loop, starting with a product policy framework. We need to address the way all products are placed on the European Union market, supporting more sustainable patterns of consumptions and designing out waste, promoting better design. In the context of the policy framework, a central role will be played by a new legislative proposal for a sustainable product policy initiative, and its core will be the revision of the ecodesign directive, extending its scope beyond energy-related products and make it deliver on circularity. Other legislative or non-legislative proposals may be considered if needed. In the context of this overall framework, I think it's very important also to recall that we are preparing two legislative proposals for the first half of next year to also empower consumers for the green transition and on green claims. Why? Because we see that today consumers do not have the necessary information to decide, and at the same time, the markets for green products are booming despite the crisis. And in order also to have a fair competition between companies, we need to make sure that we know what is green and what is not. And in the context of the green claims proposals, we are considering the possibility for companies who want to make a green claim to substantiate their claims through the EU methods on the environmental footprint of products and organizations. So instead of having hundreds of methods and very many different data to substantiate green claims, we would have a much more harmonized framework and reduce the current market failure, which is the reality today. So, but let's come back to the product policy per se, why it is needed. Because up to 80% of the product's environmental impacts are really determined at the design phase. We know that many products break down too quickly, cannot be easily reused, repaired, or recycled, and many are made for single use only. We still have no comprehensive set of requirements to ensure that all products become increasingly sustainable and stand the test of circularity. Back in March 2019, we released a staff working document on product policy, showing that we had indeed a number of voluntary tools, but their impact was limited. And beyond the current ecodesign directive, we don't have a comprehensive set of requirements. We also see, and it was highlighted by Commissioner Potocnik, that there is not sufficient incentives for manufacturers to internalize product-related externalities and act along value chains to make product more sustainable. So the objectives are to widen the scope of the ecodesign directive to the broadest possible range of products. Why? Because the ecodesign is a very powerful tool that exclude the placing on the European Union market of products which are not meeting the standards. So this is really a powerful tool. We need to establish sustainability principles and set product requirements to improve product durability, reusability, upgradability, and repairability, increase recycled content in products. This is absolutely vital, also to give an incentive to secondary raw materials markets, to restrict the single-use products, as we did, for example, in the context of the Single-Use Plastics Directive, counter premature obsolescence, and ban the destruction of unsold durable goods. Incentivize product as a service, review the provision of information in the form of a digital product passport, and reward sustainable products by linking them to incentives, notably in terms of uptake through public procurement. Addressing the social aspects throughout the life cycle of products, where it is possible, will also be part of the objectives. So we see that the objectives are really wide, and we do have a lot of work ahead of us. Let me first of all have a spotlight on the right to repair, which is very high on our agenda, both in the Circular Economy Action Plan, but also in the 2020 Digital Strategy. On this, we need to make sure that this right of repair is enforceable, and we are working on this from 3 different angles. First of all, from the consumer angles. How can we enable consumers to buy the right product with the right information on repair? Then on products, how do we make sure that we have all the necessary specifications to ensure the repair of products in terms of availability of spare parts, for example, or of information on repair, not only for the manufacturers, but also for independent repairers. And also on the producer's angle, to make sure that they are responsible for ensuring repair possibilities. So in our view, only by tackling these 3 areas, we will have a strong EU right to repair. Spotlight 2, product passport, which is very much one of the priority, to make sure that increased information on the green products go together. So what is a product passport? It is usually a combination of a unique product identifier, of data collected on the product by different value chain actors, and a physical link tagging between the product and the data. And this type of product passports are extremely important because consumers would be provided with clear information on the products they purchase. Economic operators would receive value chain information, and surveillance authorities would be provided with key information to ensure product compliance. We are focusing on a number of key product value chains in the Circular Economy Action Plan. The proposals on batteries will be issued by the Commission in December, so it will be the first product policy text in the context of a sustainable product policy framework, but also packaging, plastics, textiles, construction and buildings, and electronics and ICT. I would like also, in view of today's panel, to have a spotlight on textiles and furniture. The action plan identifies both textiles and furniture as important to be covered by the future ecodesign directive. And this means that the Commission would examine the possibility of applying sustainability principles to those two sectors, assess the need for product-specific or horizontal requirements for them, look at incentives such as green public procurement or extended producers' responsibility schemes, and encourage new business models such as leasing, for example, for office furniture or remanufacturing. So that inclusion under the extended scope of the eco-design would also be considered. What is our timeline? For the moment, the different services of the European Commission are working on this sustainable product initiative. The impact assessment roadmap has been published, and we are very grateful for the feedback that we have received, approximately 200 replies so far. We will have more replies in the context of the consultation strategy, which is under preparation and should be opened early 2021. We are building the necessary support for the impact assessment in view of a legislative proposal to the Council and to the European Parliament in the last quarter of 2021. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to explain where we stand on sustainable product policy, and I look forward to listen to the debate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much as well. Thank you very much for explaining the European Commission's Circular Economy Action Plan. Now we go ahead with the program, and I would like to have an exchange of views with some of the sectors and stakeholders, especially indeed on spotlight number 3, the textiles and furniture. And I would like to give the floor, first of all, to Valérie Boiton. She is the senior policy officer of circular economy and textiles for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Please, Valérie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today and for organizing this event. I will share my screen so you can see the slides, which should be okay now. So my name is Valérie Boiton. It's a great pleasure to be here. I am part of the Make Fashion Circular team at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And our mission is very much to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. So moving away from our current system built on the take, make, waste model, and instead creating an economy, building an economy that keeps products and materials in use, that designs out waste and pollution from the onset, and that regenerates natural systems instead of depleting them. So I'm part of the Make Fashion Circular team, so my focus today will be a little bit on fashion, but coming from a broader circular economy angle, so those are principles that are very much valid and applicable to other consumer goods as well. Our journey actually started in 2017, and we published a report called A New Textiles Economy, and where we demonstrated that today the fashion industry is extremely wasteful, extremely polluting, extremely linear, actually. So looking at Europe specifically, in the EU, we have all started buying a lot more clothes over the past 2 decades, 40% increase over the past 20 years. At the same time, about 30% of what we buy is actually sitting unused in our wardrobes. So that's a bit of a chronic, if you wish, underutilization of resources and of course a great loss of value. And then one can of course also think about all the volumes of unsold stock products that simply do not get sold or that get returned, for example, and do not find a second user. Next to this problem of loss of value and underutilization, there's of course also a huge amount of waste and pollution at the end of this very linear road. So we demonstrated that the equivalent of 1 truckload of textiles is actually being landfilled or incinerated every single second somewhere on our planet, whilst only 1% of textile fibers is being recycled into the same applications, into clothing again. Of course, this is very much a sort of a problem statement. Our mission is then to identify what the solutions may be, and this is where the circular economy comes in, which we very much identify as a solutions framework, a circular economy for fashion is something that we're very much working on. We're developing what that means in practice and how we can get there. And we've actually recently published our vision, just to, again, make it very clear in terms of when we eventually achieve a circular economy, what does that actually look like? And of course, feel free to go to our website where you can find the elaborate vision statement. I would just like to present today the core principles of that vision, of that circular economy that we're trying to achieve. And then also maybe share some thoughts as to the implications for product policy, for the Sustainable Products Initiative, and perhaps also for the EU textile strategy at large. Just to say that, of course, this is a very interesting and really an unprecedented opportunity actually to think about upstream measures, to think about how you can change the design phase, so changing from the very beginning how we produce, but also use and reuse our products. So we think it's a great moment in time to think about these circular economy principles and to build product policy around those principles. Now, our vision rests on 3 principles. One is that clothing should be used more, should be made to be made again, and should be made from safe materials, but also from renewable or recycled inputs. I'll just go into every one of these 3 principles, explain a little bit what that all entails, and then how that might be reflected in a future product policy or perhaps even eco-design criteria. So used more, yeah, we also heard it in the first presentation by Mr. Potočnik, a chronic underutilization. So we're actually extracting a lot of resources which barely get used. In a circular economy, products are being kept at highest value at all times. That is very much the core principle. So all products that are made are actually being used, and consumers, users also have the necessary tools and services to keep their products in use and to keep the emotional, but also, of course, physical, functional durability of their products. So making sure products are used more simply as they are is really what we see as the most promising pathway, both from an economic perspective as well as an environmental perspective. Of course, this links to the emergence of new business models. So for the fashion industry specifically, business models that are not simply premised on making a product and selling it, but rather on keeping a product in circulation. So we could think of rental models, re-commerce, repair, and so forth. What this may mean for the product policy for the Sustainable Products Initiative, of course, is we would advocate for that use and reuse perspective to be central. So simply acknowledging that a product that is made out of recycled materials isn't necessarily a circular product. A product that is made to be recyclable isn't necessarily circular. Reuse is really the preferred option in a circular economy. And so well before thinking of recycling, let's ensure that products get used, reused, repaired, remade, and that all those options are simply exhausted well before that. Of course, that means that we have the opportunity to incentivize not only changes in the production process, but also approaches like design for durability, design for repairability, and so forth. I think this would probably lead to a more differentiated approach coming from the policy angle. So looking at specific products, looking at those different product segments and how they are actually being used in practice. What's the typical washing frequency, for example, for these products, but also where and how do they start to break down during the use phase? So what's the wear and tear trajectory, if you wish, and then also looking at the business model that's actually delivering it. So that's a bit of an integrated set of thinking that we're also very much developing at the moment at the foundation. And the second principle, made to be made again. Of course, at the end of the day, at the end of the use phase, the products should be easily disassembled so they can be recycled in the most efficient way. Of course, there might be some trade-offs there. I mean, design for durability, design for disassembly can often lead to different paths, to different decisions. But again, this is where we feel that the more differentiated approach, looking at specific products and how they are being used in practice can be very helpful. It also means that we need to start incentivizing the use of recycled feedstock in textiles, which is not at all prevalent today. So that links to, of course, incentivizing the use of post-consumer sources in recycled feedstock. but also perhaps investing in standardization and in the processes to also verify recycled content. Overall, this point is very much about bridging the gap between design and then actually sorting and recycling stage. So we need to start identifying, and perhaps this could be part of a work plan on textiles specifically, but start identifying what exactly is hindering recycling. So is that about material composition? Is that about finishing treatments? Is that about the specific waterproof coatings, for example, and so forth? So identify those obstacles, let's say, and then enable designers actually to remove them and to design products that are made to last. And the last point of our vision is products should be safe, so enabling a safe circulation free from hazardous substances. But this also relates to the issue of microfibers, which has very much been in the spotlight over the past years. So in the circular economy for fashion, those microfibers that our clothes are actually shedding, especially when we wash them, they simply do not reach the environment. So either we tackle those by design or we focus on collection. But that's very much sort of the end state that we're moving towards. Of course, we are aware that this will require investments in material innovation. I mean, today, about 60% of all materials in textiles are plastics based. So we'll need to think about innovation, about new materials that are, of course, functional and durable as well. But there's also another important element, again, central to the circular economy, that we need to decouple the materials we use, the production of our goods, from the extraction of finite resources. So incentivizing recycled content, but also incentivizing the use of materials that are renewable. In the case of natural fibers that are being grown in a regenerative way. So thinking of cotton, hemp, linen, viscose, and wool, and all of those fibers, how can they be grown in a way that actually regenerates biodiversity, the health of soils, water quality, and so forth. Those are the three core principles to our vision and to what we would simply like to achieve, and where we are very much trying to work together with industry, so with retailers, manufacturers, but also with experts, civil society, and so forth. So we're hoping that this can create a bit of a sense of a common direction. On a more specific level, maybe on that product level that I was mentioning a few times, we are trying to put all of this in practice at the moment in a project called the Jeans Redesign, where we have actually tried to make this very concrete and practical, and to develop guidelines for jeans that are fit for the circular economy. We haven't developed those guidelines by ourselves, but very much together with industry players, with fabric mills, for example, and also with experts. And in the meantime, those guidelines have been adopted by 60 industry players, 60 companies who are actually producing the jeans according to those guidelines as we speak. So they will soon be on the shelves, and some of them are already. Four crucial elements or four core elements in the guidelines are durability, material health, recyclability, and traceability. And I'm just giving a few examples, but please feel free to have a look at our website and find the guidelines in its entirety. But maybe a few examples as, just to make things a bit more concrete, and to perhaps share a bit of our prototype experience, and may be useful for future eco-design criteria for fashion or for textiles. One example is, for example, is that we require the quality of the jeans to be preserved after a minimum amount of washes. In our case, for jeans, we have identified 30 as that number, but of course, that can be different per product. We also demand the jeans to have instructions towards the consumer to reduce the frequency of washing, to wash at lower temperatures, and also to avoid tumble drying altogether. In terms of recyclability, for example, we demand at least 98% cellulose-based fibers by weight, so very close to being a monomaterial. And to enable easy disassembly, we know it's quite iconic, but we actually ask to remove those metal rivets that you always see on jeans, or to keep them to a very strict minimum, simply because they're very hard to take off, and they make it very hard for recyclers to recover the fabric and the fibers. I'll stop here for today, but I hope this was useful as some inputs for reflection, and we'll be very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Boyten, for your presentation. Very helpful. And now I would like to go to the next stakeholder, the next speaker to give her reaction is Emmanuel Katrakis. He's the Secretary General of the European Recycling Industries Confederation. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I guess you see my screen. I'm just trying to make it big.
Yes.
Did you see my screen? Okay, then I can start. First of all, thank you very much to Jan Huitema for extending this invitation today. And I think the presentation I'm going to give is a perfect transition to the one that Valerie Burton has just given. In terms of circular economy, and I think that was highlighted by Emmanuel Maire, we do have, when it comes to a product policy, as well, some key product value chains, and for all the reasons explained, textile is among the one that was shortlisted, be it for its impact in terms of raw materials or water, and also hence for the room there is to improve circularity within textiles. So I'm not going to get back to earlier points raised in that respect. I'm just struggling a bit. Yes. So now, what is the situation today? I will start by just mentioning the graph or the flowchart that comes from a report from the EEA, namely basically showing that more or less 28 kilos per person in 2017 come from import. The production in Europe is roughly 7.5 kilos, 7.4 to be more precise, and the consumption per person is reaching nearly 26 kilos with an export of 11.2. So we see basically that we are indeed dependent on import of textiles within Europe, though there is a vivid and strong textile industry, which I think shall also be highlighted. In terms of what happens when today's textiles are collected in the bins, we took here the example of Germany, which is more or less roughly representative of many other member states. 60% of the used textiles, which are discarding textiles, which are collected, are directed to reuse markets. So they are being sorted and prepared for reuse and then sold within Europe or outside Europe into second-hand markets. 20% are used as wipers, more or less, and only 50% are recycled. I think it's always important here to keep in mind the waste hierarchy, which is here being met between indeed what goes for reuse and what goes for recycling. The truth is as well is that when we speak here about material recovery, we do have a lot of downcycling, and I will be speaking about what are the obstacles, but also the potential solutions to get better at that. And 5% are going for disposal. I'm just giving those numbers, which are numbers related to what is collected. So not to make the kind of contradiction with what was said before, especially by Valerie Burton, in terms of the fact that the industry today remains indeed mostly linear. Now, we do have a game changer in the Waste Framework Directive with the fact that as of 2025, there will be an obligation for separate collection for textiles. And what it means basically in practice is that the volumes which we as an industry will collect, sort, and prepare for reuse or recycle are going to increase. And I think that's very important to keep in mind, because since we are going, as we see for other streams in the past, and there is obviously very big differences between textiles and other materials, but it's really important to balance the supply and the demand. So from an industry perspective, what is really important is to give some clarity. Clarity in terms of reuse and recycling targets, very important to be able to foresee and make the investments. Clarity as well in terms of recycled content, because if we see that today, not much actually of textiles is going for recycling and used back into new items, is because we need to fix the economics. And to give clarity, recycled content targets have proven that they are basically working. I could take the example of plastics. I think it's relevant in that respect. We've seen during the crisis that oil prices crashed, and the only polymer whose price was decorrelated from oil prices and virgin polymer prices was recycled PET for food grade applications, which falls under the obligation of the Single-Use Plastics Directive. While today the industry is struggling, this particular industry, which is dealing with recycled PET for food grade application, has been performing better because the market signal is there through the regulation. And I think as well, I would also support what has been said in the sense that it's really important when we speak about recycled content to speak about post-consumer and then to have proper definition. So basically recycled content coming from waste, and then to speak about how we measure that in practice. And then I think we do have issues which are more related to market access and bridging sustainability with consumers and basically making sure that we give the tools, we empower consumers in making more sustainable choices. So first, really important to move on end of waste for textiles as well as for other streams, both in terms of market access to know as from which a waste ceases to be a waste and then becomes a product and is sold to other users within the value chain, be it for preparatory use items or for recovered fibers, and well-functioning market for circular textiles that has to do with the waste shipment trade, but also fiscal barriers, and hence, and I think it has been said before, the need for incentives to make sure that consumers do see basically first in terms of labeling and second in terms of pricing, be it in terms of VAT, for instance, or market-based incentives, that going for more circular and sustainable product makes sense. I here really, and that will be among my last slides, want to stress what is happening now in the Netherlands. We do work a lot with Dutch companies and companies which are located in other places where we see that the Dutch government is setting targets for recycled content and sustainable materials by 2025, 2030, and 2050. And I think that the correct way forward, because again, it gives certainty as to where and how investments needs to be made, and also in terms of scaling up capacities. And that I think would be my very last slide. Proper framework. There are different ways we can do that. EPR schemes is not a straight bullet, but I think it can help, especially in funding a proper, because we need to upscale capacity for the collection and prepare for reuse and recycling for what cannot be reused of textiles in Europe, and also bridge the design phase with the end of life phase, and hence also the evolution we've seen with EPRs, which is positive and which needs to be duplicated with textiles, whereby fees paid by producers to EPR schemes are modulated based on sustainability objective, durability, reusability, recyclability, and obviously recycled content. Incentivize the use of monomaterials or easier to recycle fibers. I think, as Valerie said, there is a trade-off, potential trade-off between durability and recyclability here, but thanks to, I think, better cooperation, stronger cooperation between our industry and the textiles industry, we can find solutions for both, and also looking at innovation and proper funding for innovation, which my colleague from Warren again is going to touch upon in a minute. Proper methodology, inclusion of all experienced stakeholders. I think that's really important, because we see today that we have all different standpoints, but all aiming at the same direction, and striking the right balance between, on one hand, voluntary industry-led commitments, to which as Zurich we have always adhering, but also binding measures to give to the value chains, and the textiles value chain is a complex one, the predictability which is needed to make the investments throughout the value chain. And also I would like to finish by that, a bit of consistency within policies taken by member states. We have been exchanges with our members, and we see, for instance, that Bulgaria today is considering, though it has not been finalized, to tax second-hand textiles, so textiles that have been prepared for reuse and which are going to be marketed in second-hand shops, and we don't think is the right way forward to incentivize more circularity when it comes to give a second chance to textiles which have been prepared for reuse. I would like to stop here and give the floor to, or get back to you, Mr. Huitema, and again, thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much as well. Thank you very much for your presentation. Then we will continue with Marika Akerboom. She is the Circular Cities Director, and she will speak about Worn Again technologies. Marika, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen. right now. Okay, I think this is up right now. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Huitema. Also want to give congratulations to the rest of the team here. I think so far the presentations have been excellent and the discussion has been really good. I'm here from Worn Again Technologies, and I'm here to talk about the material recovery and the challenges that we see with that today. Quick introduction on Worn Again. We're a technology startup. Our purpose is to create a technology that can turn end-of-life textiles back into virgin quality raw materials. So we recycle post-consumer textiles. We take in polyester and polycotton blends. We produce from that PET resin and fiber-grade pulp, PET from the polyester and fiber-grade pulp from the cotton side of things. To do that, we use a solvent technology. And right now we're on the move from R&D to scale up. That means that we're going from lab-based work to actual pumps, tanks, and valves. Our next step is a large-scale demonstration plant. But right now, our biggest commercial risk is feedstock. And with feedstock, it means everything that goes into our process and that can then create our outputs, which are PET resin and fiber-grade pulp. Now, if you see, and if you draw this picture and say where we are in the value chain, we are right in the middle. So we are in the circle and connecting the circle. So on the left, you have the collection of the textiles, and on the right, you have the value or the manufacturing supply chain that creates raw materials back into the fabrics. Particularly for today, I want to talk about that left side of the picture, the collection points towards Worn Again. So when we talk about collection, we talk about feedstock, and feedstock is something that comes into our process. Today, if we look at the big pile of textiles out there, once it's being collected, about 45% can be resold or reused. 10%, unfortunately, is not good enough for anything and goes into landfill. And then 45% is non-repairable, and that's because it either has holes or stains or there's damage on it, and it will go to the lower, what we call lower fiber grades. Now, that's exactly what we are interested in in Worn Again. Then if you look at that 45% of the non-repairables, you can, again, split that up in a few ways. If you look at it specifically on fibers, you can find cotton in the mix, you'll find elastane, you'll find wool, and you also would find pure polyester, polycotton, and polycellulose blends. And that's exactly what we as Worn Again are interested in. If we look how the sorting process goes today, once you go through your closet and you have sorted out some things that you don't want anymore or are broken, you go and put it in the bin or in store or maybe a charity shop. Then it's being manually sorted in sorting facilities. It's then being built into packages and it's going to end markets. These end markets are, as I've already mentioned, it's either global resale or it's the lower grades, such as wipers or insulation for your car. Even your dishwasher has some old clothes in it. And if it really is not for anything, it goes into incineration. In 3 years from now, all these things will still exist. We don't think that part will change, but there will be some things added to it. So for instance, in the collection, we might see online take-back schemes or anything else that is innovative on getting textiles back into a material recovery supply chain. For the sorting, we think or we know that there will be an automated sorting process added to it. And with automated, I mean something that can scan the fibers and not only can tell it whether it's good for second-hand use, but what is actual in the fiber. So whether it's cotton, whether it's polyester, whether it's wool, and therefore can also give it an idea and then put it in certain streams. After that, there will be two other elements added to it. So as Valerie already really rightfully mentioned, we do not want the zippers or the buttons or the studs into our process. We want the textiles only. So we need to deaccessorize the products. After that, we also would like to see them cut into smaller swatches because for us, it's better to have smaller swatches going into a process rather than a whole t-shirt. And as I just mentioned, we are going to be in end markets. Regenerative recyclers, as we call it, people like us, will also suddenly become part of the uptake of these textiles. So, but if you look at what's out of here really important to us, it's those two things. Sorting and processing is for us crucial, because then it can mean, if that's there, that we can take in the products that are right for a process. There's today, what we see is, because we are not established yet, there are some of our colleague regenerative recyclers who are, but they're not really big yet. So we're talking about low volumes, and therefore the economics to make this whole process work doesn't exist yet. We're also sort of missing still the full-blown showcase that a production process like this can work. So we're sort of still at a standstill, but that doesn't mean that nothing's happening, of course. So for us, we think it's the perfect storm, and people are willing, people are really trying to get stuff done, but there are two sort of opportunities that really can help us get there. And one for it is kickstarting demand, and that you can do that by creating, for instance, as Emmanuel already mentioned, setting recycled content targets, because that would mean that it's attractive for people to invest in companies like us. But if we exist, we can also then go to the sorting industry and drive that demand for feedstock and give them the confidence to innovate and get it ready for us. Secondly, stimulating innovation is really important. So making sure that it's attractive to scale up. And for instance, they're boosting innovation by financial incentives, but also schemes like EPR, extended producer responsibility, will help distribute the financial responsibility of the whole process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much as well. That was great in time. And thanks for the examples and the clear presentation. I would like now to hand over the floor to Per Stolz, who is from IKEA Resources and Waste Manager. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huitema, and hello to you all out there. As we all know, we have a lot of challenges in front of us. And to name a few, we can talk about climate change, we can talk about sustainable consumption. And these points has made us to work towards a circular and a climate positive IKEA and Inca group. And we will do that by 2030. And to reach this great and needed objective, circular economy is a very, very important tool to reach a climate positive future. So what is a circular economy for IKEA? It's really about prolonging the product lives and the materials. It's not only about recycling, it's really to go through all the parts of the company, from where we start to produce to where we meet the customer, to drive a change towards a more circular economy. And that's a huge undertake, that's a huge challenge. But at the same time, it gives us quite good new opportunities to meet the customer in a different way, to promote new business models, and actually to inspire and enable 1 million people on the planet to live a better life within the limits of our planet, which is our ambition. So circular economy in IKEA, we have committed to 4 very important points. And the first one is about design, which we have already touched today. And our ambition is to have all our products designed with circular principles in 2030. A second ambition points at the use of materials, and also there for 2030 we want all our materials to be renewable or recyclable materials. The third ambition is really how we meet the customer. So new circular opportunities and services, how we can help our customer acquire, care, and dispose of products at end of life, and pass on as well product at end of use. And the fourth one, maybe the most important of them all, is really that we understand that we cannot do this alone. by ourselves. It's really to work together in partnership with other companies, but also organizations to build a new ecosystem for the circular economy. What I would also like to say here is that, I mean, taking focus now on reusability of products, we are experimenting, we are launching some really interesting activities. And last beginning of November, we opened the first secondhand shop of IKEA products outside IKEA store in Eskilstuna, Sweden. And actually also now for what we call them the Black Friday, but we have renamed Green Black Friday, we will launch extensive reuse scheme where we take back products from customers, give a value for it, and resell it in our stores in a second time. So really trying to redefine that day and that moment as well. We have been following, of course, as many of us have done, the development of the European Green Deal and also the Circular Economy Action Plan with great interest, and we are welcoming the ambitions in those initiatives. Of course, when we look at the ambitions, we also need to look into not only what, but also the how we can achieve those ambitions. And we are trying to share our experiences that we have had during the years working with circular design, and where we actually have found out that there is no one-fit-all solutions. Even if in a sector of furniture, we need to have a policy that helps us to be flexible in a relevant method to the different products. We need a harmonization. We cannot live with different set of rules in different parts of the common market. We need a harmonized single market. And also then a development of a common language. And I think we have here together a role to play in developing this new language for circular economy. And then finally, we remain very optimistic that this is really the right time to develop this framework that will enable the adaptment of circular economy, this level play field that we are so dependent of as an actor in the new circular economy. And this is really, really important for this decade of action that we need to perform. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solz, for your clear presentation. And I would like to go to Stefan Arditi for the last presentation of today.
Good morning all, and thanks Mr. Huitema and the team for inviting DEB today. I will start sharing my screen as fast as possible. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Can you now?
No, I'm sorry.
Let me try again. Okay, sorry for this. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for this. So as the last speaker, I try to get quite short so that we still have a bit of time for debate. I will concentrate on the need for ambitious policy to address both textile and furniture as part of the Sustainable Product Policy Initiative. So the first thing is really that the announcement by the European Commission on making sustainable product the norm should be taken seriously. And I think it's just about really challenging the status quo and about a radical transformation along the line presented by Mr. Potočnik earlier on. One thing we have to recognize is that at the moment, we do not have a clear policy framework to address textile and furniture along the principle of circular economy. And one suggestion we have is to establish specific work plan under the new eco-design framework to investigate textile and furniture and make that the first steps of the textile strategy, but not wait for a high-level communication on textile strategy to potentially transform into legislative and non-legislative initiative afterwards, because that will take ages, and I don't think we have so much time. So the solution could be, let's identify specific work plan on textile and furniture as part of the new eco-design framework. If we have to be effective and also have the industry react quite quickly to this need for transformation, I think we need to have an integration between the different instruments. And in this diagram, you see that if we could define measurement and enforceable method for defining minimum design requirements for placing product on the market, then we could just align the other instruments such as EPR and modulated fee, such as procurement, which should be, of course, public procurement, but please not only. Private procurement have also a big role and to play to change the market. And finally, product label of excellence, such as the eco label. And if we imagine we have a core set of criteria, such as illustrated in this slide on, for example, durability, repairability, on recyclability, on detoxification of material, we only have to play on, I would say, on the scale of performance. And with one measurement methodology, with one reporting of the performance, the industry can know where they would play. Would they only meet the minimum requirement? Would they already try to target to have a modulation of their fee under EPR? Would just try to aim higher and be compatible with procurement tenders? Or will they actually try to target immediately the best product in class? And this integration could really accelerate the market transformation. At the core of this system, as reminded by Ms. Mayer, there is this idea of a digital product passport. It has different goals. We think that in terms of contents, it should go into material chemical content, circularity performance, carbon and environmental footprinting, and also integrating social and due diligence criteria, which are so essential for textile, for example, but also we think for furniture and in fact for other products as well. And in terms of functioning, I think it should really be an interoperable information system. So I think as presented by Ms. Mayer, we can aggregate in one access point, the information that may be scattered in different database and different information system. And it's very important that when we say it's a passport, it does not mean it should prevent trade. In contrary, it should enhance trade. But there should be a key principle here: no data, no market. A product without this kind of information that will enable to know about its sustainability profile and to unleash the circularity potential should not be accepted on our market. I would say a secondary aspect of this information is also the need to address green claims. I mean, if we want the consumer to be driven toward the best product, if we want to create the incentive for the front runners, we need to make sure that people are not confused with a lot of green claims. And here you see, we just remind a majority of people surveyed find it difficult to understand which products are truly environmental friendly. And there is a mistrust growing with the growth of environmental claims on the market. And now nearly 50%, 44% of consumers say they do not trust this type of information, which could make, the message by front runners, by those who really want to perform sustainably, being difficult to hear and to detect. That's why there is a collective question we have to ask and to explore together is what type of labeling scheme we could associate for textile and furniture. Can we build on the experience of the mandatory energy label, which ensure comparability and enforceability? And how can we meet the challenge of capturing multi-dimension of sustainability under one consumer-friendly information scheme? One thing which has been also, I think, insisted on by Mr. Potocznik is this idea of promoting circular business model. And at EB, we think they are fundamental. However, we don't think that they should substitute to a product policy. In fact, we think that those business models will actually be helped if there is a minimum requirement for product being placed on the market, because today it's extremely difficult for this circular business model to compete with non-sustainable, cheap, disposable product when all their efforts is to try to value, to maintain the value, to gain a proper ownership on the total value chain. So we think we should not believe that because we promote circular business model, we should be exempted from minimum design requirement and from respecting sustainability rules. They are complementary as binding regulation is complementary with economic incentive and pricing policy.
Mr. Aditi, can you come to a conclusion?
Yeah, fine. This is my last slide, and just what I want to finish with is this idea of creating a policy framework to ensure a continuous transformation of the market toward the sustainability, as announced in the Circular Economy Action Plan and the roadmap. And for this, we think it could be essential to set some headline target on resource use reduction, on material footprint, but that we do not believe that a material target based on resource efficiency, on resource productivity, could make this transformation driver that we now need. Thank you very much for your attention and looking forward for the debate.
Thank you so much as well. I would like to give the keynote speakers the possibility to react to each other maybe, or to the different stakeholders. So Mr. Potocznik and Ms. Mayer, would you like to take the floor and to make some comments or reactions?
It's basically difficult to add anything. I think all the presentations were excellent. Some more concrete, some more in principle. And for me, it's always extremely important, and that's why the introduction was done as it was done, that we keep the compass on the right direction, so that we do not get lost in the trees while we lost the view of the forest. So it is essential that the incentives to the markets are changed, because if we do not do that, we will basically just repair the damage which is done there, with everything which is linked to regulation and everything which is linked to public financing, which is coming on the top. But I would just like to thank all the colleagues. I think the work which they are doing, it's really astonishing, and I really like the thinking and the way how this logic has evolved. If I just think that 6 years ago we were still discussing either circular economy makes sense or doesn't make sense, and why it makes sense and why it doesn't make. We came quite a long way, but time is of an essence.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Mayer, would you like to come in as well?
Yes, thank you very much. I found the debate extremely interesting and already very mature for the next steps. I mean, we are obviously for now looking at receiving the opinion of the European Parliament and of the Council on the agenda on circular economy. So this is critical, and we think that we will have a consolidated view at the beginning of next year. But at the same time, we have to think ahead and prepare the work on the legislative side together with the stakeholders to make sure that we are ready for this mandate. And we know that there is not a lot of time. So the fact that everybody is already engaged on the debate, also on textiles and furniture, is really a good point. Maybe, I mean, I take many things from the debate, also in terms of the need for innovation in the sorting of clothes. I mean, it's also a complex operations are being done there, and if we can improve on innovation, it will be extremely beneficial. Maybe a last word on targets, because this is always something very important. And what we have set as political targets, goals in the circular economy, it's to reduce the overall consumption footprint and doubling the circular material use rate over the coming decade. We will have also to upgrade the indicators in the monitoring framework for the circular economy to make sure that they are not only about waste, but well also on products. And we will be also looking in the context of the legislative proposal on sustainable product policy, how we can have some indicators. So to be watched. This is also an important question for the future. But again, I see that we are already well advanced in the discussion on the next steps and also on how to cover textiles and furniture. Thank you.
Thank you as well. We have a lot of people that are following us via live stream, and there are also people that have also some questions. The first question is to Mr. Potočnik. The question is from Siegfried Anton Schmuck. He's from ecopreneur.eu, and his question is, how can we ensure that external costs are internalized fully into the products, and how can we ensure that the market economy can adopt this as quickly as possible? Mr. Potočnik, can I give the floor to you? Maybe you can have a reaction on that.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Yeah, I think that's an essential problem of where we are standing, and it's not. There is no black and white answer for different types of the commodities on the market. For example, if I just give you an example of the food, until we have the system that actually food prices to a large extent are not taking into account the cost for the environment destruction, we are subsidizing rich and poor which are buying the food. And of course, food provision and access to quality food and healthy food, it's an essential precondition for anybody, because food is extremely important for us for life. And the consequence is, because in the overall social policy and income distribution and also wealth distribution, we still have quite a lot of poor people. The consequence is that we are, to a large extent, using social policy when it comes to the food price, but we are sacrificing environmental policies. And the result is as it is. So my point is, it's practically impossible to deal with the question only if you focus on part of the policies which are linked to the food and agriculture. So you have to put it in the context of overall design of economies and societies, because only in that context you can actually start moving the things ahead. It's quite dangerous if you start with the policies and full cost accounting without really addressing simultaneously the social conditions that this would be met on the market. So it's a kind of elephant in the room, and I firmly believe that with the signals which we are sending on the market, and which I tend to simplify by saying that production capital, it's overvalued and over-rewarded, human capital, it's undervalued and under-rewarded, and in many cases, natural capital, it's not valued at all, that we cannot expect then the social, environmental, and economic balance. And it will never happen until this is corrected. So with all the mechanisms, which of course include taxes, which include price policies, which include subsidization, which include any of the mechanisms which are giving signals to the markets, we can remedy that and set it in the right direction. But it is an essential question, yes.
Maybe as a follow-up, Mr. Potocnik, Otto Friebel is asking, the past months we experienced that the economy part of the circular economy turned out to be very fragile. In our opinion, a mandatory percentage of recycled content in new products should be introduced quickly in order to secure markets. Do you agree? And if so, when do you think this could be arranged?
Yeah, the circular economy part will, in economic context, will always be fragile until there will not be economic incentives, and in the recycling until the valuation is not settled, and if it's more attractive to basically use virgin materials, if it's more attractive to basically destroy natural capital, then this will be done on the markets, because it's actually logical choice of the consumer and producer. So we have to go there. But of course, the answer would be to the concrete question: whatever contributes to that, it helps.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, more practical notes. Mr. Potocnik has to leave, unfortunately, for another webinar. So therefore, I would like to thank him so much for his expertise and his knowledge and his great presentation as a keynote speaker. So yeah, thank you so much. I was very thrilled by it, and I hope we can use your knowledge for the future as well to really solve this challenge. And I think we can. So we have to act. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan, for all the efforts which you are doing in European Parliament also, and thank you also for the colleagues. They are excellent, and take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye. On that, then further, we have also some colleagues of mine in the call. Mr. Martin Hojcik, who is a Renew member in the Environment Committee as well. I would like to give him the floor to maybe comment or ask a question to any of the speakers today. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan, and big thank you for organizing this seminar, because it's very interesting insights from the panelists. Very appreciated. One comment or kind of between comment and question, I would like to hear your takes on this. Yes, there is a very valid focus on textiles, electronics, and buildings in terms of the circular economy. This is where we need to look for lots of for how to improve, and there is lots of ways to improve. But I'm wondering whether you see specifically in the automotive sector, among the passenger cars especially, maybe a different pattern, or a pattern that is something that is so to say a potential case of a rapid movement to way more the service-based system than a product-based system. Because what I observed recently, and that's kind of with the, on one hand, with the development of especially smartphones, let's be honest, but also then in the nascent technologies and the developing of technologies of the autonomous cars, you see that it's way more economically beneficial for people to use shared cars. And also there is clearly, and the markets are expecting a push towards autonomous cars that one will not own, that will be more, way more a shared car services. And whether you see this as something which could have an impact on also the circular economy, and could have then a, so to say, spillover effect on other sectors, because I think this is something which is very interesting area to watch, and I expect it to have a massive impact on the Europe's economy, given the relevance for the car industry in Europe. So would like to hear, so to say, maybe a bit of the focuses that you had, but I would like to hear your views on this. Thank you.
And Martin, just practical. Do you want to ask this question to the Commission, to Emmanuel Maire, maybe, or to another?
Especially, yes. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, great. Ms. Maire, could you maybe react on this?
Yes, with pleasure, and thank you for the question. Indeed,
sorry to interrupt. If it's maybe possible to put on the video.
Yes, it should be on. Can you see?
Yes,
there was a slight delay. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
So briefly to recall that in the 7 key value chains that have been identified in the Circular Economy Action Plan, we do have one which is dedicated to batteries and vehicles. So the first step will be a new proposal on batteries, on the new rules on recycled content, and measures to improve the collection and recycling rates of batteries and the recovery of valuable materials. So that's already one big proposal that will be submitted by the European Commission in December to you. Then we also have the intention to look at the rules on end-of-life vehicles in order to promote more circular business models as well. But the question you raise on the product as a service solution for cars is also mentioned in the Circular Economy Action Plan and linked to the comprehensive smart and sustainability mobility strategy under the Green Deal that will also be released soon. And indeed, we look at how these new business models, where you do not own the car but you lease it, can be beneficial in terms of reducing virgin material consumption, using alternative mode of transport, or eliminate waste and pollution. So this is very much on the radar screen.
Thank you so much. Maybe again a question to you. We have some question and answers received via the live stream. One of them is Matteo Bulgarelli from the KU Leuven. Could you maybe outline a set of policy instruments that have been considered to incentivize manufacturers of consumers' electronics and ICTs to improve the durability and the upgradability of their products? So, Ms. Maire, could you maybe react on this?
Yes, also to say that electronics and ICTs are one of the key value chains that we look at, and the European Commission is working on a circular electronics initiative for example, to take measures, including on mobile phones, tablets, and laptops under the eco-design framework. I mean, all energy-related products can already be tackled with the existing eco-design directive on energy efficiency, but also on other elements that we have been testing with the washing machine sector, for example, on fridges, to make sure that that this type of products can easily be dismantled, that the spare parts are available. So we are very much looking to this communication on electronics and ICT to reinforce all the incentives for manufacturers to make sure that they produce long-lasting products and not products that end us in our drawers and are not used anymore.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. I have another one for you. That's from, let me check, yeah, Julia Breidenstein from Humana Kleidersammlung. She's asking, do you think that lowering VAT on second-hand goods and repair services could promote the circular economy in the textile sector? And how, and can the EU make an impact on this? Can the EU do something on this?
Yes, this is an excellent question. The European Commission did make a proposal to have different VAT rates to distinguish between them, specifically to allow for cleaner products to be privileged. But this proposal is still on the table of the Council, and I'm not sure that this is moving very far. I mean, all matters related to VAT and economic incentives are very much, the priority and the field of economic and finance ministries, who are sometimes very jealous about their competences. So we need to reach out to them to make some step changed on this.
Okay, thank you. The last question of today, because we have to conclude before 12:30, is from Peter Koppert, also to asking the Commission, Emmanuel Meyer. Having heard great ambitions on circular textiles, the question raises, what is the status and planning of the announced EU strategy for textiles?
Thank you very much for the question. We are working internally within the European Commission with our colleagues from the Directorate General for the Internal Market and Industry to plan the next steps on the textile strategy. This is something that we want to do with many services of the European Commission, because textiles is of interest to many services, especially on the trade dimension, development cooperation, the social aspects are important. So as soon as we have the different political green lights, we will move ahead with the consultation process and the involvement of stakeholders. I would also like to take this opportunity to recall that all stakeholders are really welcome to use the Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, which we have set up together with the Economic and Social Committee, and which is a great place to discuss specific sectors' interest, be it textiles, retail. So do not hesitate to Google European Economy Stakeholder Platform again, this is a great opportunity to exchange views and to prepare for changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And hereby, I would like to thank you so much as well for your presentation, for your time to answering all the questions that were raised. I would like to also to thank the different sectors and stakeholders, Valerie Boyten, Emmanuel Katrakis, Marika Akkerboom, Peter Perstolz, and Stephanie Arditi. Next, I would like to thank so much the technical staff and the staff that were organizing this webinar, and especially also a big thank to the translators that are working behind the screen to really make sure that everybody understands and that we can communicate with each other. And of course, I would like to thank so much all the viewers and the people that were watching the live stream. So thank you so much. And bear in mind, if you have any questions because of this webinar, you are very much welcome to question them and send me an email. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The interpreters, thank you as well.